Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to present to you the module 4 of the course Sustainable Development Planning. But before starting the course itself, let me share with you this proverb from Thomas Sankara, whom you know very well, who is saying that the disease is not cured by saying the name of the medicine, but by taking the medicine. So we need to take the appropriate medicine to cure all the issues that our continent is facing. So that's the vocation of the PDOP. So I would like you to try to understand the PDOP and see at what extent it can be helpful to you to solve the main issues you have in mainstreaming these important agendas in your national development plan, in your sectoral strategies and policies. And hopefully we will bring the change that are very important for our country. So to do that, in this module 4, which is about the integration of Agenda 2063 in national programmatic document, we will be using once again the purpose and deliverable-oriented planning tool. So we may do that and in 3 chapters. The first one is devoted to the history of the African Union. The second one is devoted to Agenda 2063, and the third one is about the integration of Agenda 2063 into national programmatic document. So let's start with the first chapter, by a little history from the organization of African Unity to the African Union. The first section is about the organization of African Unity, or AU, and the second section is about the African Union. The OAU was created on the 25th May 1963 by 37 heads of newly independent African states under the aegis of the Emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie I. It was a Pan-African vision of a united Africa, free and appropriating its destiny, as clearly stated in its charter. It served as the voice of national liberation and anti-apartheid movements in international bodies, mainly at the UN, United Nations. In 1990, Namibia got its independence, and the apartheid in South Africa ended in 1991. And with those important events, one could consider that the OAU has accomplished its mission. Then was decided a new venture for the African Union, which has been founded by the CIRT Declaration on September 9, 1999, which 3 years later, in Durban, South Africa, gave birth to the African Union. So this new organization is meant to deal with various social, economic, and political issues common to African countries, to accelerate the continental integration process with a new paradigm which, beyond the traditional themes of unity, solidarity between African countries and between the peoples of Africa, the defense of the territorial integrity and independence of African states, has decided to promote peace, security, and stability on the continent, to accelerate the political and socio-economic integration of the continent, to promote the sustainable development at the economic, social, and cultural levels, as well as the integration of African economies, to promote and defend common African positions on issues of interest to the continent and its people. So it's an uninhibited Africa determined to fully play its role in the international arena by leveraging its strengths through the richness of its soil and its subsoil, its demographics, a relatively young population, a growing middle class, a potentially important internal market, but provided that the appropriate investments in the human capital are made. So what's the content of the Agenda 2063? We see that with those three sections. The first one is about the outlines of the Agenda 2063. The second one deals with the main component of the agenda. And the last one will be how the agenda will be implemented. Section 1. So what are the main points of Agenda 2063? First, it's a reply to the shift paradigm I have just talked about. It is also the blueprint and the master plan of Africa aiming to transform the continent as a global power in the future. It is also a strategic framework of the continent which aims to reach its goal of inclusive and sustainable development. It's a concrete manifestation of the will for a Pan-African Union, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity within the framework of Pan-Africanism and Africa rebirth, Africa Renaissance. It also represents the determination of the African country to reach inclusive and sustainable growth and economic development. All that is borne by a vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa led by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force on the world stage. So Agenda 2063 is a materialization of how the continent intends to achieve this vision over a 50 years period from 2013 to 2063. So what are the elements of the Agenda 2063? First, we have the 7 aspirations of Africans. The detail can be seen by opening the hyperlink with which is associated at that point. The second element is the first of the 5-10 years plans. The first one, 2000, cover the period 2013 to 2023, which comprises 20 goals and 40 priority areas. There are also some flagship projects that can be seen also with by opening the hyperlink, and the continental frameworks. What are the results expected from Agenda 2063? First, its aim to improve the quality of life of African citizens, to transform inclusive and sustainable economies, an integrated Africa, empowerment of women, youth, and children, a culture-centered, well-governed, peaceful and cultural Africa in a global context. And finally, all those will be implemented at 3 levels. The first level is the continental level. The second is at sub-regional level with the Regional Economic Commission, the so-called REC. And the third one is the national level. That's the main subject of this module, to see how that can be implemented at the national level. So the first step for doing that is what we are trying to do within this module, to integrate it in the national programmatic documents. So the first chapter, which is dealing about how to do that, comprises 3 points. The first one is the general consideration of how to do it. The second one is relating to the integration of the agenda itself into national programmatic documents. And the third one is relating to how do we integrate several agenda into national programmatic document using the PDUP framework. As a general consideration, one can say that Agenda 2063 is better structured, or its result framework is better structured as compared to the Agenda 2030, which, as you know, is broader scope of countries. This 2063 agenda is also more homogeneous in terms of targets. Its target is more homogeneous. The targets also have indicators, but at the same time, this agenda has also targets with different level of results. So you may have some targets that are impact, other outcome, other output. That's an issue when you want to integrate, when you want to domesticate the agenda. So as such, the approach for mainstreaming this agenda into the national programmatic document is very similar to that of integrating, of mainstreaming the SDGs into national development strategies and plan. The existence of target of different level of result for the same priority area. And here as well, we need to use the tool for determining the result levels, as we have done it for the mainstreaming of Agenda 2030. So to do that, we have chosen an example to see how this exercise can be performed. And here we have chosen the priority area 1.1.3, security and social protection, including for the disabled people from the result framework of Agenda 2063, which comprises 4 targets, A, B, C, and D, as you can see in the next table. So, the first two targets of the table, I'm just discovering that the table is not here. We will ensure that is provided to you in the course material that will be posted on the platform. So when you will see the table which has 5 columns, the results of the analysis are in the 5th column, but the targets are in the 1st column. And to see what's the level of the result level of each target, we need first to formulate the finality. We need to formulate the purpose of each target and to formulate the deliverable of each target. So through the deliverable, we can recognize whether a target corresponds to an output, to an outcome, or to an impact. It's quite the same thing when we were domesticating, when we were mainstreaming Agenda 2030. So based on that table, we can clearly see that the first 2 targets in the 5th column, so that's what we can read in the 5th column. The first 2 targets correspond to outputs, which are social security and social protection. These are things that you can use. Anything that you can use is considered as output in the frame of the PDOP. You can see also that the 3rd target corresponds to an impact, because through the deliverable of that target, you will notice that it corresponds to a state. So the impact describes the state of the population, the state of people. And that's what the deliverable of this target suggests, that it corresponds to an impact. And the 4th, as it expresses some performance, it expresses because if we don't pay attention, we may think that it's rather an output, because the verb that was used with that deliverable is endo. But the term which is important here is that adaptation. One may adapt the infrastructure to the disabled people. Adapting the infrastructure to the disabled people means some performance, and as such, this 4th target corresponds to an outcome. All that is possible, all those conclusions is possible through the formulation of purpose and development. Without that, I don't know how we can reasonably integrate these targets in the national programmatic documents. But once we identify impact, outcome, and output, the next step will be to perform a causal analysis relating to the impact and the outcome to identify which outputs are required to get those results. And once we get the outputs, we need to integrate them into the virtuous transformation loop under the appropriate outcome that was revealed by the causal analysis. So based on what I've just said, we can make some generalization of the steps that are needed to mainstream, to domesticate the Agenda 2033 into the national programmatic document. The first step of it is the choice of the objective of the agenda that meet the country's priorities. For this step, it's advisable to refer to the full wording of the objective. Step 2 is the choice of the priority areas relevant to the country. And step 3, the choice of the relevant targets for the country. Step 4, that's what is done through the table, is the identification, the determination of the result level contained in the target, or to which each target corresponds to, and the dedicated analysis table. And once that is done, from step 5 to the following steps, they correspond to step 6 to 12 of section 2.3 of module 2 of the course. If you do the mainstreaming work as described, then you will get all the benefits of PDOP as described in module 2. So all those benefits apply if the work is done as just described. So we go to the second type of mainstreaming, which regards the mainstreaming of several agendas in the programmatic document. I think that most of the country are facing such problematic because they have adhered to, they have committed to many international agenda. So the less we could do is Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063. There may be much more agendas, but the principle is the same. But before doing that, the issues that are at stake here, first you will need to translate the agenda into the national programmatic document to ensure the implementation, the commitment that is relating to them, to follow up on the said commitments, which may be multi-sectoral, and you may also deal with the need for the institutional framework, which will take into account that multi-sectoriality. So the main concept that have to deal with this is the concept of convergence that has been developed by the Economic Commission of Africa and also UNDP. And these concepts help to see, to evaluate, to assess which targets of the agenda that are concerned here, which target coincide and which one don't. When they coincide, and depending on the level of coincidence, we may say that there is a strong or weak convergence. And when you have some targets of various agendas that are convergent, so by mainstreaming one of these targets, you fulfill at the same time the mainstreaming of the same targets within the other agendas. But when the agendas are non-convergent or they have a weak convergence between them, you need to do the work separately for each agenda. In both cases, you need to use the result level determination tool, the table of the PDOP programming procedure, and then to apply the step provided by the PDOP for the integration of those agenda into the national programmatic document. So that is the work. I think that we will continue this work through the discussion on the platform. And to nurture the reflection and the discussion on the platform, we are suggesting two questions. What challenge did you face in mainstreaming Agenda 2063 in your country's development plan? And second, your respective ministers entrust you with the task of mainstreaming the following targets of Agenda 2063 into the sectoral policies of your country. The first target is eliminate all communicable disease by 2030. The second one, the average vessel stopover duration is reduced by at least 30% by 2020. And third, ensure at least 90% of farmers apply climate-resistant production system by 2035. So the questions are: A, describe the subsequent steps to implement the instruction of your minister. B, which of the steps do you consider most crucial for the transformation targeted by Agenda 2063 to take place in the area sector concerned? C, what are the levels of result resulting from these targets? And D, how would you treat each of these said results for the effective integration into the sectoral policies? So we come to the end of this module, which I would like to end by quoting Madiba, Nelson Mandela, which say it's always seems impossible until you do it. So I would just like to tell you that yes, we can do it. We can mainstream Agenda 2063 in our national development plan, our sectoral policies and strategies. We need to believe that, and I'm quite sure that PDOP can help us to do it. Thank you for your kind attention.